Hi, welcome back to the Box Delights. We're playing Puppet Wars Unstitched. Let's get cracking then with turn 1. The first thing we're going to do is draw one card into our hand. Players do this simultaneously. There's no concept of starting play or anything like that. Next, you play a card from your hand, and this is going to be called your animation card, and you play it face down. And the idea is this is the card that you're going to use to animate your puppets, and the lowest pip value is the person who gets to animate first. So you've kind of got a trade-off. The higher pip value you choose, the more powerful cards you can put in play, but the less chance you have of going first. So as a player, what you want to do is you've got your hand, you've got your toy box, and you're trying to look through here and think, well, what do I want to put in play? Now, chances are you'll probably want to get one of your sidekicks into play first, right? So I've got Judge and I've got Misaki. Now, for Lady Justice here, her sidekicks both have very low pip value animation requirements. And Misaki's good for moving around the board because she's got abilities that allow her to move through occupied spaces. And Judge here has got some pretty good attacks. So let's put, well, we need a ram. Do we have a ram? Can we put Judge into play? We got 7 tone, 4 ram, not enough, we need 5 ram, 6 mask, 9 ram, 11 crow, 5 mask. So let's play 9 ram and try and put Judge into play. 5 ram is a requirement, 9 ram is a card we got. But Lady Justice has this ability, and it says, Guildmaster, ignore 1 ram in the animation requirement of all puppets you control. So Lady Justice can kind of bring in rams because they're of her suit at lower cost. So rather than playing the 9, we can go for a lower value, and let's go for the 5 mask, okay, because we don't need the ram. As for Seamus here, we'd like to put Bête Noire into play. She's a good sidekick, and she has an activation requirement of 6 crow. But Seamus has an ability. He's a resurrectionist master. It says ignore 1 crow in the animation requirement of all puppets you control. So that means Bête Noire, instead of costing 6 crow to bring into play, she just needs 6. So Seamus is looking for the lowest possible activation card, 6 or higher. Not worrying about suits now. So we've got a 9. Happens to be a 9 ram. So we're going to place 9 down as our activation card for Seamus. Now both players flip, and whoever has the lowest pip value will go first. So Seamus has 9, Lady Justice has 5, so she'll get to take the animation round first. And what she'll do is she'll use her 5 mask and her Guildmaster ability to put Judge into play. So Judge gets animated, so we grab Judge's mini, and he starts the board on Lady Justice's workbench. So if we occupy more than one workbench, then we can obviously got more options in where we deploy our puppets. Now we can move. The first thing you do when you animate a puppet is look at its movement cost, and you can also take one action. Now you can take the action first and then move a bit, you can move and then take the action, or you can split your movement and take an action in between moving. First we need to see how many hexes he can move, and Judge here has a movement of 2. So that means we could take an action, move 2, move 1, take an action, move 1, or move 2, take an action. So we're going to move Seamus 2. I'll put this red tile underneath so we remember he belongs to Lady Justice's team. The other thing we need to do is record the fact that this is the first animation round. I'll just use one of these grey workbench tiles that are not being used during the game. So with 2 movement, let's move off here. Let's cover this gap between these 2 impassable terrains. Now all puppets in Puppet Wars have an attack range of 1. Judge here has a special attack which has range 2, 1, 2. There's no puppets within range. Okay, so we've moved a puppet and there's no actions now that we can take. The rulebook here explains what actions we can take in addition to any specials on the puppet card. We can attack range 1. We can mine, which means take over a workbench that we're currently sitting on. We can scrounge. We can take an upgrade from our scrap heap. We'll come to that if and when we tear apart an enemy model. We can scrounge those bits that come out of that puppet. Sticky Fingers is for expansions. We don't use this one. And there's a special action here called What Pretty Buttons We Have. And with this, you can tear apart a friendly, one of your own puppets, and take its upgrades. Alright, so move, actions, done. Activation now flips to the other player. So Seamus gets to activate. I remember he had the 9 RAM. And we're going to activate Bête Noire with an activation cost of 6 crow. Remember, we can ignore 1 crow because of Seamus's Resurrectionist Master. So we're going to bring Bête Noire into play. Let's have a look at her card. Move 2. She has defense 6 with a suit on there. We'll explain what that means when we come to it. Attack 4. And an upgrade limit of 2. She's only got 2 stitches. Let's go and grab Bête Noire's mini. And remember, we have to place her on our workbenches, which for Seamus is here. We'll pop a green counter under there for the sake of the video. And with her movement of 2, I think we're going to head this way. We'll keep that impassable terrain between us for now. End our animation, which means we move to animation round 2. So we each draw a card. Pick an activation card. I think we will pick this 4 RAM for Lady Justice. For Seamus, I think we want to activate Bet again, so we need 6 crow, but we don't need the crow because of Seamus. So a 6. Well, the lowest thing we've got to a 6 is a 10. Okay, let's reveal our activation cards. So with a 4 pip value, Lady Justice is going to go first. And with 4, she's going to bring in Mizaki with the activation requirement of just 2 and no suits. So here's Mizaki, and we're going to place her here. Mizaki's got a movement of 3. This puppet ignores suits in a puppet's defense when attacking, and leap ability. This puppet may move through but not end on occupied spaces. Anyway, with her 3 movements, we're going to move 1, 2, 3 to this workbench, and we're going to take a 0 cost mine action. 0 cost means we don't have to pay any costs. We don't have to flip any cards to see if we succeed or not. We'll come to that when we make non-zero cost actions. But basically we do a mine action, and the mine action is kind of free and it always succeeds. And we're going to take the neutral workbench token and replace it with one of Lady Justice's purple workbench tokens. And now Lady Justice controls 2 workbenches. The problem with actions though is that they exhaust your puppet. Now what that means with this exhausted token on there, okay, we can activate Mizaki again, but the problem is if we do, she takes a rip, and that means she's going to lose one of her stitches. Okay, and at the end of a turn, and a turn ends after our 5 activation rounds, remember, all puppets will lose their exhausted tokens, and they'll begin ready and refreshed for the next turn. But at the moment, Mizaki, she's taken an action, she's exhausted, and the safest thing to do is not animate her again until the next turn. But if we do, like I say, she'll lose a stitch. Now Seamus with his, what did he have? He had a 10 RAM plus his Resurrectionist Master ability. He's going to activate Bête Noire once more with her 6 crow activation cost. And with her 2 movement, she's going to move over and grab this workbench. And of course that's going to put an exhausted token on her. She's got a really strong attack, so we've got to look out for this. Move to the next activation round. Let's draw some new cards. I'd quite like to bring the rider in. So the rider is our other sidekick with an activation cost of 11, no suit. So let's play this 11 ram. As for Lady Justice, I quite like her to send Judge after Bête Noire, so that's an activation cost of 5. Yeah, because of Guildmaster, of course. We don't need the ram, so let's use our 5 tone. And we reveal, and of course, Lady Justice goes first. She's going to activate the Judge with move 2. The Judge's special attack, Pins and Needles, has range 2, so let's move through here. And I think we'll use our attack on Bête Noire here. So Judge gets an exhausted token, and his action says Pins and Needles. It needs a ram, range self, effect. Make 2 attacks against a target puppet in range 2. What does this cost here of 1 ram mean? The first thing we need to do is check whether Pins and Needles is successful. And for this we just need to do a flip from our puppet deck, and all we're looking for is a ram. So if we flip a ram, then we've successfully taken the Pins and Needles action. We flip a card, and yes, we did it. We get a 6 ram. So Pins and Needles is successful. This goes to the discard pile. If the flip hadn't been successful, we could have potentially supplemented from our hand. We could have played the 9 ram. Okay, it means our control hand is 1 card short, but it means the action would have been successful. Now we get 2 attacks on Bête Noire. Our attack strength is 3, so we flip 3 cards. 1, 2, 3. And what we need to do is hit Bête Noire's defense value, which is 6 crow. So we need at least a 6, and we need at least a crow. And we've been fortunate, we flipped a 7 crow. So you choose the card from those flipped, discard the rest that you want to use to activate the attack. 7 crow is enough to hit Bête Noire. We just needed a 6 crow to hit her. Again, if we hadn't got the 7, or if we hadn't got the crow, we could have supplemented from our control hand. So poor old Betty, she takes 1 rip. Right, so your damage is always 1 rip, unless something special on a puppet's card says otherwise. And what we do is, and this is a whiteboard marker. You can use tokens on here if you want, but I like to use a whiteboard marker and just cover that up. And even when it dries, the whiteboard marker is just going to rub off. So we rip off one of Bet's buttons. She has 1 rip. Now we've got a second attack. So we do the same thing again. We're going to flip 3 cards. But before we reveal them, before we flip, Bête Noire, and this can happen on any attack, has the opportunity to dodge. Now dodging now is a good tactic for Bête Noire because she's only got 1 button left. Okay, 1 stitch and she's torn apart. Now to dodge, all you say is, before they've flipped, I'm going to dodge this attack. And instead of using your defense, which here is 6 crow, you can play a card from your control hand. And I'm going to play the, I could play the red joker, which has a value of 14, which means that they're going to have to summon up a joker to hit me. But let's save that for now. Let's go for 13. Let's go for 13 mask. So this now, from Betty's control hand, or rather Seamus's control hand, becomes the new defense. Now as it goes, Bête Noire also had an ability here. And that's the thing about this game. Keep an eye on your characters. Know your puppets and know their abilities. Bête Noire has under the bed. When this puppet has the opportunity to dodge, you may discard a crow to place this puppet back in the toy box. Okay, so instead of facing the attack, we can just place her back in the toy box and we can re-summon her, and obviously she'll summon back with her full strength. Let's not do that. Let's because I want to show you how dodge works. So Bête Noir's dodging the attack. We now need a 13 mask to successfully attack Bête Noir. So let's flip our cards. We have an ace of mask, which means every ace is a double suit. So this is 1 mask. So we've got the mask we need. We've got 10 mask and we've got 12 ram. We don't have 13. So now we can look in our control hand and we could place anything alongside that. Well, we don't have anything. We've got 6, 11, 6, 7, 9. We don't have a 13, so we're not going to hit. So it doesn't matter what card we use, we're going to miss. And Bête Noir survives to fight another day. Now Seamus will activate, and he's going to look for something quite quick, I think. And the fastest we have is the Scyllarid or the Hooded Rider, and our activation card was 11 ram. So we're going to bring the Hooded Rider into play. And let's put the Hooded Rider, it's got to be on a workbench. This one's occupied, so it's going to have to be down here next to Seamus. And with his 3 movement, he's going to run in here. 1, 2, 3. In fact, I think we'll put him up here behind this terrain, and then we move to activation round 4. And so the game goes on. Let me just show you before we finish up here. Remember, we're battling for these things. Let me show you what happened if we had ripped apart Bête Noir here. So let's assume that we'd done another damage to Bête Noir. All of her stitches are now undone and she's ripped apart. There are some upgrades that give you extra stitches, and they need to be marked off as well before a puppet's ripped apart. But once all stitches have gone, we would remove the puppet from the battlefield, and this goes to a scrap heap. And we also grab the puppet card and we turn it over with its upgrade side face up, and that also goes to the scrap heap. Now for Bête Noir here, it's something called extra thread. So we've unstitched Bête Noir, and now there's this upgrade called extra thread. It says stitch to the floor, 2 crows, range on self, effect, all enemy puppets in range 2 and line of sight gain an exhausted token. So extra thread gives you this extra action, but not only that, it gives whichever puppet has this upgrade attached an extra stitch. Now if this puppet was torn apart by an adjacent enemy, that enemy now has an opportunity to attempt to attach that upgrade, and they do that with a flip. So if the judge were adjacent, that would mean flipping a card, and with a requirement of 6 crow, we got 12 crow. So that would be a success, and judge would take the extra thread. Now it wasn't adjacent as it goes, so he doesn't get that opportunity. Instead, it goes to Seamus' scrap heap. And one of the default actions, the standard actions, is scrounge, which is a 0 cost effect. When you can select an upgrade from your scrap heap and try and attach it to one of your puppets. So that's how upgrades come into play and affect play. So this was Puppet Wars. It's a wonderful 2-player duel. You can play 3 or 4 players, but with the basic set, it's really built for, I guess, 2 or 3 players if you grab an extra puppet deck, which are about £7, I think, if you look online. There's a ton of maps. You can download them from puppetwars.com as well, different maps and configurations. And because your puppet army is so customizable, you can vary the map up. There's a ton of replayability here, and obviously, depending on which puppets you play, you're going to have different upgrades available to you. So here we've got some magic slippers from Mizaki, which are a magical weapon and have a shopping spree ability. Right, so there's tons of stuff in this game. Give it some love, give it a try. Puppet Wars from Weird Miniatures. That's it, bye for now, see you next time.